Today we will talk about the CSS, which is the tool that helps us adding styling to our HTML code. So far we have talked about HTML tags, different attributes, and so on. So today we will add some more functionality to this. And let me start with the agenda. Can you see my screen?
Yes, it is okay.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I see your screen. Yeah.
Okay. Today we will talk about what exactly the CSS is, and so what all this stuff written on the right side is about. We will talk about its syntax, how we can add styles to our HTML page. We will talk also about selectors, so how we can define which element we are adding styles to. And we will also talk about coloring and about text fonts. Let's start with the reason why we use CSS in our work. Probably if you have already worked with HTML, you have seen that its functionality is restricted. So if you add some text or some images or interactive elements like buttons and inputs, they don't look very nice. So you see just this black dull text written in Times New Roman, and you can see only blue links, and you don't see any alignment here. So if we want to make this website nice and to add some I don't know, some colors and fonts and hide different elements. Like here you can see the menu that is hidden. Then you need a more good, a more wide range of tools. Just a moment. I just saw that the guests were waiting in the room, but now I see that everybody is in. At least I hope so. Okay, so probably you now understand why we need CSS for. And let's talk about a couple of definitions. So CSS means the abbreviation means cascading style sheets, and it's a style sheet language that is used to describe the presentation of a document written in HTML or XML, like for different XML dialects. So it describes how elements should be displayed on not only on the screen but also on the paper or in speech or another media. And it is the language that is read by browsers. So browsers parse it and understand it. And it also has some standards. It's specified by the W3C organization, and it has 3 versions. So the first one is now deprecated, and the second or the third are widely used. And probably if you look for job offers, you will mostly see the last standard, the CSS number 3. And there are different types of styles. So there are styles that are defined by the browser, and they are different in different browsers. So for example, if you put, for example, a title or a paragraph in your document, and you don't put there any styles, so it will be just plain HTML, and you try to open it in different browsers, you will see that your page is that it looks differently. So like Google Chrome has its own styles, and Firefox has its own styles, and Safari, and etc. We can also add our own styles as developers. So we can write our documents like CSS documents, or we can add our styles to HTML documents. So these styles will be the author styles. And the user can also add their own style. So they can open the developer tools, or they can add different plugins, so their web page would look differently. So these are different, three different types of styles. Let's proceed. So the basic syntax of CSS looks like this. So we put a selector. So in this case, the P letter means paragraph. So this writing means that we want to color all our paragraphs in orange. So this is the P letter is the selector. So it can be P, it can be div, it can be, I don't know, the H1, H2, so different types of headings and so on and so forth. We will talk about selectors later during this lecture. So just not for now, you need just to know that this is how we define which element we want to add styles to. And in this figure brackets, you can see the declaration. So the words on the or the combination of words on the left hand side means the properties that we are using. So in this case, it is the color, the text color, and the value is on the right hand side. So in our case, this is blue. So here it's orange, here it is blue. And let's go on. The order in our selectors, it does matter. So for example, if we add green color to our paragraphs, and below we put another P selector with the color of lime, and so this one will no longer be used, and all our paragraphs will be colored in lime. And we can also add comments like in HTML, but the syntax is this. So we put a slash and this symbol. So yeah,
I think it's called asterisk or star.
asterisk. Yeah, because it's in Russian language we call it the star. Yeah, so yeah, in asterisk. Yeah, this one. Yeah, so this is how comments are written in the CSS file. So they can be multiple lines or a single line, doesn't matter. Okay. And the styles can be internal or external. It means that they can be written in a separate file or in the same file where you write your HTML. So for example, here in the head tag of our HTML, we see a link tag that leads to our CSS file, which is located in the CSS folder named style.css. And so here in the style.css, we see that we have some styles for headings and paragraphs. Our styles can also be written like internally. So in the same head tag inside, we can also add our style tag. And so this is like it has an opening tag and a closing tag. So inside we write all our styles in the same syntax. Like we have a selector and different properties and values. And apart from that, we can also create inline styles. So we don't write anything in the head, but in our tags we add an attribute named style, and in double quotes we write all the properties with values. So we don't put any brackets here. We just write property and a value inside, and for each property we add a semicolon in the end, so like here and here, to divide them. We can also import styles to like from one file to another. So for example, here we have two CSS files, style and style2. And there are some styles here. There are also some styles here. And this file is imported here. So we have this import syntax, like we put an add symbol and import and the file name. And to add all this CSS code to our HTML code, we just write a link to the main CSS file. So the one that has imports to other CSS files. We can also specify media types for our CSS. For example, we can have different CSS styles for the documents if we want to print it on the paper, or if we want to see it on a screen. Sorry, if we want to see it on the screen, we want it to look differently. So we put imports to like into different lines. So this file will work for screens, and this one will work for printing and speech. We can also use the media queries for that. So not only imports, but we also can divide styles for screen and printing within one file with the help of media queries. So we open this media query selector, like add media screen, and inside we put all the code that relates to screens. And the same for printing. So all the code related to printing goes here. And we also can define which styles we use to screens and which ones we use for printing, we can also define this in HTML. So we can put two different links to different files. So this link with the media attribute of print and handheld, it goes for this file, and the main like the main styles that will be used for screens, they will go here. Device types are different. So by default, we don't define anything. So if we don't define the type of our device, then we will our styles will be used to all devices, and we can also add such definitions as print, screen, or speech. So print, as I said before, it is used for printers. Screen is used for computer screens, tablets, phones, etc. And speech is used for screen readers that read the page. I already showed you this types of apps. So mostly these styles define like order of the elements and so on. There are some deprecated values like oral, braille, and for the braille fonts. And for the TV, we also had our own media queries, but now they are deprecated and no longer used. So how can we add styles to our page? All the methods that I mentioned before, they can be used either alone or in combination. So if you use one, then you are still allowed to use another type of adding CSS, but you need to remember the hierarchy, which is the priority of styles. So if you write inline styles as attributes to your HTML tags, then they will have the highest priority. And if you write styles in the head of the element, like you have links to external files, or you have the style tag, they will have lower priority, and between them, the priority will be defined by the order. So which one goes last has the highest priority. So do you have any questions by now?
We have three ways to add CSS file: internal, external, and inline, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so which is the most often way we use to add CSS file to HTML file?
Yeah, so the most common way is to write your CSS code in a separate file and then add a link.
Add links, yeah. And then so if we have multiple CSS file, should we post many link tag to link one by one CSS file, or we will import it into just one CSS file?
I would say that it's more common to put just one link, which will lead to a common CSS file that will have imports to different CSS file. Or if you have a build, like if you're, for example, using, if you have a big project and you're using, for example, some tools like Webpack that build like one big minified CSS file. So it will work this way. It will gather everything that is written inside all your CSS files and compile all this code to one single CSS file, and then the link will be will lead to this one.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, this is it about adding styles, and let's proceed with the dimensions and length. So if we talk about the length of an element, it can be measured in centimeters, millimeters, inches, pixels, points, which is one like 1/72nd part of 1 inch, and picus, which is 12 points. Mostly we use if we use any absolute length, we mostly use pixels. So I haven't seen any of the other units, but probably I'm not sure if you if you will face them or not. But this unit is probably the most common in web projects. And we also have our relative length, which are like m, and it's a unit which is relative to the font size of the element. So it means 2 times the size of the current font. I'm sorry, 2m means 2 times the size of the current font. So, for example, if you put if you add a font size to an element, for example, you add 12 pixels, and for example, it's a div and it has some paragraphs inside. And for example, if you add the font size of 2em to the paragraphs, then they will be 2 times, the text there will be 2 times bigger. Also, we have different units like x, which is relative to the x height of the current font. It's very rarely used, so probably you won't face it. And the ch, which is relative to the width of the 0 in one font. And we can also add rem prop unit, which means which is relative to the main font size of the whole document. So the root element, the HTML element, by default, it is equal to 16 pixels. So if you add this unit so if you measure your font in rems, then it will be relative to the main HTML font. And for the width or height of the element, we also have the such units as VW or VH. So 1 VW means 1% of the viewport width, say with V height. So if you have, for example, like we go back to the Amazon, so this is the viewport, so the window of your browser. So for example, this header is not the viewport, but all this area is. So this distance will be the viewport width, and this one will be the viewport height. And we also have v min and v max. It means that, for example, if we have a desktop like this, the v min will be this, the height of the element. And for example, if we have a smartphone which has like the portrait mode, the more narrow dimension will be its width. Then we can define our colors differently. So for example, if we want to add color to any element, it can be defined by the hex values like this, by its name. So we have some reserved words like white, silver, black, blue, etc. And we have the RGB. If you have ever worked with photography, um, probably you know that each color is can be defined as a combination of red, green, and blue colors. So if we have, for example, like more green or more blue, it will be another color. And it can have properties from 0 to 255 to define how many like how many of, for example, red this color has. So for example, this one will be red because it has like it is like a pure red, so it has the maximum value of red channel and zeros for the green and blue. And the RGBA, this is quite the same, but it has a fourth value of opacity. So it means that the color can be more bright or more light. And same for the hue, saturation, and lightness, but this one is used rarely. I haven't seen it much in the CSS code. And talking about hex, this writing, for example, can be can also be described as RGB. So we have numbers from 0 to F. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then A, B, C, D, E, F. So F for like FF here would mean like 255 here. And for example, 00 would mean like 0 here. But you can use there are different calculators if you look for them in Google. So for example, hex color. You can pick any color and define it in hex or RGB. So for example, if we look at pure red, it will be like 255.00, and for example, like pure blue, it will be so red, green, blue means 0 for red, 0 for green, and 255 for blue. And in hex, it will be written as 0000 FF. So FF means 255. But you can also use different values and they will define different colors. So the colors in CSS are mostly written by like this, or by a reserved word, or if you want to add some opacity to make your element more transparent, then you can add an a last value, or like 1.3, so it will mean that it has like 30% of opacity, so it's quite transparent. Okay. So before we talk about selectors, do you have any questions on the colors or any dimensions, length?
I have a question about the opacity of the color. The normal color will come from 0 to 55, but opacity, do we have max and min of opacity?
It's from 0 to 1.
0 to 1. It's also mean the percent, like 0% to 100%.
Not sure. Just a moment. RGB. RGB. I guess it's no. It's written like this. It can be the 0 can be omitted, so it can be written just like 0.5. So 0.5 or 0.5, it means the same. And yeah, so this the A stands for alpha channel. So just a moment. No, it's I guess the MDN says that it can be written with the percent. Let's check. Let's add some CSS here. Oh no, let's just add some RGB. For example, 255 0 0. Why don't we think? Why don't we see anything? Just a moment. Sorry, background color.
Hello, background.
Yeah, so now we see a red square, and for example, if we add last like 50%, yeah. So yeah, percents on the they also work here. Yeah, so if we add 1 here or 100%, that it will be like fully bright red square, and if we add 0, then we will see nothing. So yeah, any values between these two, they will work.
But I see that the color is different with the background color property.
It becomes more, yeah. So background color, the color property means for it stands for the text of the element, and the background color, it stands for like the background. And yeah, we can add colors here. So yeah, it's different because of the opacity. So it becomes more like transparent. So for example, if we add black color to the body, and for example, we add 1, 0, like 0.1 here or 0.2, we see that this is like the different color. So it's red, but it's not bright. So it's like transparent. It's like we can see black through it. So yeah. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, so let's proceed. And so these are the selector. Okay, so these are the property values and 4 selectors. Just a moment. So we can define which element we refer to by its ID or its class or by the tag itself. And we can also address to like all elements on the page. So for example, here I used, I referred to the div tag by tag, but I can add an ID. My div. I create the name myself, and I can use the hash syntax and write my div. So I will see that these styles apply to the element by its ID. I can also add a class. So it will work the same. So I can refer to the class of the element. So they can be addressed using this dot syntax. So the hash for ID and a dot for class. But what's the difference between an ID and a class is that, for example, I can create just divide them from each other. I can create two different elements with the same class, so that they could be styled in the same way, and I won't have to write the same code once again. So I can style my two divs here using only one CSS selector. But I cannot create two elements with one ID. So this code would be invalid. And I don't see anything in the console, but it's forbidden. And you will
sorry,
receive.
I think you
Sure.
need to trend the dock to
Oh,
the
yeah,
host.
Well, but I guess it doesn't matter, so probably it will work here. But if you use the validator, like here, let me check this. Probably it won't work. Oh, sorry, it's too slow today. Oh my God. I'm sorry, the validator isn't available. So yeah, if it was available, it would show us an error because the ID must be unique for each element. So like my div1 or my div2, this code is okay, but not like it used to be. Okay, so these are the main selectors. And this syntax, it will take every single element on the page and apply the font size to all the elements. And if we talk about the priority, I'm sorry, let me go back to this slide. If we talk about the priority, for example, we have an element that has, for example, an ID, a class, and we can also write some styles to this element by its tag, and which styles will apply to the element. So the priority is this. The inline styles are the strongest. Then we have the ID. So for example, if we write width here for the same element and width here, so this one will be applied. Then goes the class, then the tag, and only then the styles that are used to all elements. Okay, there also are some combinations of selectors. For example, here we select all divs on the page and all paragraphs. So this comma means like and. So take all divs and take all paragraphs and apply all the styles that we write in brackets. We have a descendant combinator. So this combinator will select all P elements that are inside div elements. So if we have any P element that is not inside a div element, then this paragraph won't be selected. We also have a child combinator. So we will select all P elements which are direct children of div elements. So for example, if we switch here, okay, let's delete it. For example, we have a div element, and for example, we have a paragraph with some text, text inside, and we want to address this write some styles here. For example, we have a div and we have red. So this paragraph is a direct child of the div element. And for example, if we create like an a tag, inside. So in this case, the paragraph won't be a direct child of the div element. So there is an anchor tag inside between them. So this this style won't apply to the paragraph. But if we delete this symbol, then it will be applicable because this selector chooses all paragraphs that are inside all divs, no matter what their relationships are. So we also have uh, an adjacent sibling combinator. So it will select all P elements that are placed immediately after div elements. So for example, if we just a moment. So if we put it here, like for example, another text paragraph, and use this selector. So this color red will be applicable to this text because it goes immediately after the div element. And we have this general sibling combinator, which selects every UL element that's, for example, here, every UL element that are preceded by a P element. So for example, here, if we put, I don't know, like an input, for example, doesn't matter what its attributes are. So this selector only selects paragraphs if they go immediately after div elements. But if we put this symbol, it will choose all paragraphs, like all the paragraphs that go below. So no matter if they go immediately after the div or how many of them there are, so they all will be chosen. Well, so here we see some examples of descendant selectors. So we can see a main nav, and inside we see li elements and the a elements. So the a elements are inside li elements, but all the styles are applicable here. If we see a child combinator, then we select here we select all li elements that are located inside of the OL list, the unordered list, and they are colored in green. Here we address to the paragraphs that goes immediately after the heading. So here we have a heading, an H2 element, and there we see the paragraph, this one, and only this paragraph, the first one, is bold. So this one will not be applicable here because of the plus symbol. But if we use the tilde symbol, then we address every paragraph that goes after the headline class. So it won't reach this paragraph, but all the paragraphs that go after the heading, they will be colored. Okay, So you have any questions about the combinators?
I have a question about in case the parent text has a style, and inside that the children has another style, which will we apply?
Mm, it depends on the order, and it depends on the how to say. Just a moment. Let me show you an example. For example, we have a P element, a paragraph. Some some text, and let me put here a span. The first word will be a span, and if we so if we put it in this order, it will work. So with this order, it would work in the same way. So yeah, it would work like this. So if a parent element has its own styles and the child element has its own style, so the styles for the child element will have like more priority. So yeah, I hope this is clear. But if you, for example, have different spans across uh, the page, you can make it more like more strong. So if you add, for example, the P element here, so you select all the spans that are inside the P elements, and for example here so these styles won't work because this writing is stronger. Okay, so I hope this is clear, but if you have any questions, you can still ask them. Okay, so we also can address to the element by its attribute. So here we can select all elements that have a target attribute. Doesn't matter what its value is. And here we can select all elements with the target blank. So it must be an exact value. So target blank, and that's it. So how to say it must be strict. So not like we can put a space here or here, or just text that contains the word blank. So it just is like a strict rule. And here we can select all elements with a title attribute that contains the word flower. So here we have just this equal symbol, and here we can put a tilde symbol, and if this attribute contains the word, no matter if it has any more text, then the element will be selected. And here we see that we can also select all elements with a lang attribute, but can be any other attribute, which starts with the specific value. In this case, this is English, like all lang attributes, all elements with a lang attribute that starts with en. So it can be like en dash GB or en dash US. So, but it should start with this value. We can also add, we can also specify attributes and selector, attributes and selectors. So for example, here we can address by tag. So we select all A elements, like all anchor elements, with the href attribute, which contains the string w3c. And here we select all anchor elements with the href attribute that starts with HTTPS, and here with the href attribute which ends with .pdf. So this is how we can also specify our attributes. Here we can see some examples. So we can select all elements with the which have the attributes title and color them in maroon. So here we have only one element that has a title attribute, and we can also select anchor elements with href attribute and color them in green. So here they would, the both of them would be colored in green, but here we see another selector of an anchor element with the target which equals to blank, and we rewrite the background and we add a padding on the left. So that's why they will have different styling. So here we see some other examples, like an attribute value that starts with some text. For example, here we have the HTTP href attributes. So here we can define the three of these links and color them in red. Here we can address to the elements that end with .com, like here. So they have a different background color, and this one that contains the text Google, it is colored in yellow, and this one with the title attribute that has a value of block. So one of the several attribute values equals to block, then it will be colored in green. Okay, so before we go to the pseudo classes, do you have any questions? And I would also suggest that we have a break. What do you think about it? Okay, so I guess nobody's against. So let's say at 7:40. What do you think about it? It's like a 8-minute break. Okay.
I have a question.
Okay, yeah.
Um, let's go to the 25th base.
Sorry, I don't hear you very well.
Let's go to the 25th base of the slide.
Okay, so which one?
Um, 25th
25th? Okay.
para. Yeah. At the in the example, select element with a title attribute containing the words follower. I see a example in the next byte that containing the substring. It is different between substring and the words here. I see there is select
Mhm.
the attribute containing the substring or the word, but the symbol use different syntax.
Okay, let me check it. Containing the words and containing the substring. Um, mm, could you please give me some time to clarify it, and I will probably text it to you in the chat later after our lecture, if you don't mind. So I will clarify the difference and give the information later. But what is the difference between the word and the substring? Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so let's have a break and I will come back to you in 5 minutes. Hello, is everybody here?
Yeah, yes, we
Yeah,
have.
that's great. So let me just open the chat in case you write any questions. And let me share my screen once again. So now we will talk a little bit about the pseudo classes. So pseudo class, what does it mean? The syntax is this. So after it's a selector, we put the two dots and hover. So it means that these are not the styles for the links in their like normal state. So they won't work when the links are not clicked. But the hover pseudo class, it will work if you like put your mouse on the link. So for example here, if I put my mouse here, then I see that it becomes darker. For example, this share button, or here, like I'm hovering over the slides of the presentations and of the presentation, and they are showing this border around them. So this is the style for the pseudo class a hover. And these are there are dynamic pseudo classes, like for links we have different states of the link. So it can be just regular link, so it's just like the default value for this, and it can be visited. So if you have already clicked on this link, then after you open your page once again, then it will be colored in another color. And so, as I said already, you can hover over an element. The element can be active or focused. So you can click on the link, and at the moment you click upon it, then it will be colored differently. So there are a lot of different states of an element, and they can be reached like this. And other pseudo classes of the elements, for example, our inputs can be in different states as well, like enabled or disabled, or checked for the check boxes. And we can apply different styles to them as well. We can exclude some selectors from applying our styles. So for example, here we want to add the black color to the links, but only for those who don't have the attribute of target. So this will like work the other way around. So it will exclude these elements. And there are also different selectors like is. So these are these elements that are inside the elements A. But I honestly also have never seen using it using the pseudo class is in our production code, but it also exists. There are some other structural pseudo classes. So the first child class will choose the paragraph elements if they are the first element, like the first paragraph elements in their parent element, and the first of type selects the first P element, the first paragraph element that is the first P element in in sorry, in any element. So for example, just a moment. So for example, if we have a div and inside we have like 2 or 3 paragraphs, so only the first one will be chosen here. And here, for example, if we put a heading in front of the paragraphs, the heading, nothing happens with the heading, but the first paragraph will be chosen. And here it won't be chosen because it's not the first child of its parent, because the first child of the div element is the heading, so it's not the paragraph. I hope this one is clear. And same thing with the last child and last of type. And we can also specify the number. And and child and last child. So it comes from the end of the list of elements, and the same for ends of type. Yeah, just a moment. So here we see some examples. So the color of like a regular not visited link, the color of the link with the mouse pointer hovering, the visited link, the visited link with the mouse pointer, an active link, the first B element in its parent, and the last B element if it is the last element of its parent. We can also add some so-called pseudo-elements. So these are like after, before, and the first letter. So 3 types of them. We'll start with the last one, with the first letter. So we can access the first letter of the text and color it or style it differently. So for example, in this paragraph, it will be the letter T. And we can also add some symbols or some text before or after other elements. So for example, here we have our text. So search method of a line by symbol sort, and by accessing the pseudo element before, we can add a small element here. So it doesn't have any content. It has a display property of inline block, so it's like an inline block element. It has a width and height, and it has some background color, and it has a margin on the right side of 10 pixels. So it this distance will be 10 pixels. And after the text, we can add some text content dash a rule, and it will be colored in gray. So this is how we can add. We can also add elements on the page, so they won't be added into the HTML. So these are mostly used for adding some decorations or something like that. or some images that are not important to the content of the page. We can also group some selectors. Probably I have already told you about that. So dividing them with the comma, we can reach the H1, H2, and H3 at the same time and write the same style for all these types of headings. Also have inheritance, as I have already said. So we apply some styles to the body of the page, we apply some styles to the div elements, and we can also specify the div elements that are classified as red and colored as red. So the color green will be the weakest style. The div element will have a slightly stronger style, so it will be applied to all div elements. And the div with the color red, this one will be the strongest. So all the divs that are classified as red will be colored in red. And finally, we can also add the important declaration, which overrides any style that we add to the element. So you have to be careful with this. So if you address any selector and write a property with a value and add this important word with an exclamation mark, then it will no other style will be applicable to this element. So it has the highest priority. And because of that, it's sometimes called an anti-pattern. So you shouldn't use it unless you really need to. So be careful with the important statement. And if we talk about the CSS specificity, so we, as we already talked about it before, we have different types of accessing elements. So we have our tag selectors, we have our class selectors or ID selectors, which have different weight. And here you can see a table of how this the weight of these selectors is calculated. So for example, we have one tag selector, so it is quite weak, so it adds a 1 point here. And for example, if we have an anchor element within a P element, so it adds 1 more point here. And for example, if we want to specify an element by a class, it adds a point here. So the class selector is stronger than the tag selector. And for example, if we want to access a class and a tag, so 1 point will be added here and 1 point will be added here. So ID is the strongest, so it adds like 1 point in the first column. And so here you can see different combinations of these rules. And here there is the style attribute, which is the strongest among all these. And an important is probably even stronger than this one. So if we talk about the priority of selectors, you can refer to this image, to this table. Yeah, so this is the important statement. And so here we can also see some different combinations of selectors, but I guess it's probably I don't know. As for me, it's probably more like helpful to just try it by like for me it would be it was helpful to try it by myself, so just to try different combinations of selectors, because sometimes it's not understood from the first sight. So here you can see different specificity of CSS, like in the previous picture. And here we also have a reference to the CSS variables that we also can use. So what exactly variables are? We can create a value and give a name to this value. So for example, here we have a value of 1.5 EM, and we give it a name of spacing. And if we want to add a padding to an element, and we use this syntax like the variable, and in brackets we see the name of the variable, which is called spacing. Then the CSS will know that spacing means 1.5 EM. We can also use like mixins or blocks of code. So we can define a property of base colors, which will be like not one property, but a combination of properties. So it is a color and it is a background color, and we can apply this mixin to our class. So it's like a block of code with a name. And before we go to the cascading, do you have any questions on the priorities and variables?
What's the meaning of the word pseudo, like in the pseudo class and pseudo element?
Pseudo means like fake. So pseudo element, it means that it's not the element that exists on the page in the document object model, but it's like a fake element that doesn't exist on a page. So it's created by us with the help of CSS. So if the styles won't be applied to the document, this element won't be shown. So you won't see it because it as I said, it doesn't exist in the document object model. Yeah, so pseudo means like fake or something like that. Okay. So I already talked about this in the beginning, but if we also speaking about priority, we can also speak about the cascading. So what does it mean? So we can have multiple style files, and if we have the browser style, the author style, the user style, they will be prioritized. Sorry, just a moment. Will we learn about SCSS? Yes, we will have a lecture on pre and post processors. So yeah, we will learn about it. And yeah, so speaking about the priority, you see a list of types of documents, and the lower the lower the style rule is, the higher its priority is. And speaking about documents, so as I said, the browser styles have the lowest priority. So if we write any styles, then the browser styles will be overwritten. And if the user changes anything, it would overwrite the browser and the author styles. And if anybody's adding important, then important will override everything that goes before. So here we can see different examples of different CSS properties. So about the background, we already know that it can be color, or we can also add background images. So you can look at the documentation at the MDN, and there are different properties for that. We can add borders to our element. We can add the text color, the type of the mouse cursor, like it can be an arrow, like I'm having now, or it can be a pointer. We can also change the type of displaying element, so it can be either block or inline or other values. Oh, sorry. We can add different font styling properties, such as font size, font style, or etc. And we can align our text like horizontally and vertically. And also we can change its visibility, paddings and margins. So for example, paddings are inner, like the distance from the element to its text. For example, if we say about like this border, so the padding is something that is inside. And margin, so margins of the element, so these are the properties that define the distance from the element to the closest element. So like for the next one, something like that. So we can also define its dimensions, width, height, and etc. We can also use different types of resetting the default styles. So as I said before, if you open a website in different browsers, I mean, not the website, I mean, if you open your HTML document in different browsers and you don't apply any CSS there, you will see that all browsers have their own styling. So before we write any CSS there and try to write any styles, we need to ensure that our code will look the same in different browsers. So we have to like reset the default browsing styles. And for that, we use such tools as the reset and normalize. So these are the style sheets, the CSS style sheets like this, that we put in the beginning of our CSS file, or we import the normalize and reset files like the first. And only after we have put this code, only after that, we start writing our CSS code. So it's very important because before you write your CSS code, you need to make it look the same in all browsers. So yeah, here you can see the links where you can download it. And we have already talked about the colors, so a couple of slides more. So for the RGB, we see that we have 3 different channels for red, green, and blue color, which can be rewritten like hex. And we also have a hue, saturation, and lightness type of writing these values. You can also see a link here where you can read more about it. And yeah, here we can also see some examples. I already shown you some. So we have different different types of how we write all these values. So for example, here, if these 2 symbols are the same, so we can only write 1 letter F. And for example, here, 2 times 0, we can replace it with 1, 0. And for the RGB type, we can write it. We can write our values with numbers or with percent, and it will work the same. So here, you can see some different examples of, for example, RGB with the level of 300. Let's look how it will work, because I have never seen such writing RGB. So yeah, it will count as the maximum. So it will count as red. So it will reach 255 and stop at this value. And if you write 500 here, then it will work as 255. And if you put a negative value here, then it will work as black. So negative works as 0. Okay, so the HSL model isn't used very often. Honestly, I have never seen it because people mostly use the RGB or the hex, and we have like a range here of 3 properties. So it's like a angle on a color range, then saturation. It means like the brightness of the color, and lightness means just like the lightness, so from black to white. But it's not used widely. The opacity, I have also told you about it. So we can define it either by changing the RGB to RGBA, or changing the HSL to HSLA. Or we also can add a special property named opacity. So for example, here we put and opacity of 0, the element will be transparent, like 100% transparent. But if we put, for example, an opacity of 0.5, then although it is black, it is gray here because it's 50% transparent. And the last thing I wanted to talk about today is the text styling and typography. So as you know, in web development, we can use different fonts. So they can be divided into several groups, like sans serif, which means they don't have these little things on the ends. So the most popular fonts are listed here. And the serif fonts, they are mostly used for printing, and they are styled a little bit differently. And the monospace fonts, the monospace means that each letter, so for example here we see that the M letter is a little bit wider than the O letter. Well, and for the monospace fonts, each letter has the same width. And we also have a cursive font, the Comic Sans, but it's not commonly used. And here you can see if you have to use the Comic Sans font or not, then probably no. you don't have to. Okay. So there are also some different properties that help us style our text. So it can be italic or regular. It can be written differently, like small caps, so small capital letters. It can be bold or thin, depending on the font weight. It can be of different size, so bigger, smaller, etc. And the line height, which means the distance between the lines, also can be different. So we and also we can specify a font family, an exact font family, and also add a fallback font in case, for example, here, if the Asphalt font isn't loaded, then we will use any sans serif type of font. Okay. If we talk about the font size, we can use different units. So the absolute unit is the pixel. So you can just define the size in pixels. The EM and RAM are calculated depending on the size of either the parent element or the whole page. And we can also specify our font as like with the percents of the font of the parent element. So for example, if a parent element has a font size of 20 pixels and the child has a font size of 50%, then it will be 10 pixels. But I also haven't seen this one much, so mostly it's pixels. EM versus RAM, I already told you. So it's calculated depending on the size of or either parent element or the whole page. And an actual size of the text differs for different font families. So we define it here as 100 pixels, but for different fonts, it is different. So for example, this one is smaller than the others. So remember about that. And if we talk about the line height, so this is the property that helps us create the distance between the text and like between the one line of text and the other lines. So for example, here you can see different values of line height. So here it is normal, like one, the value of 1. Here it's one regular line of this text and 20% more. It can be also defined in pixels. So here it is 21 pixels strict, and it can also be added in percent. So here it's 150%, like 1.5. Same as here 1.2, and here it would be 1.5. We can also add our own fonts to the project. And to do this, we have different file types with the fonts. So these are different file types. The WAV, the EOT, the SVG, and TTF. SVG is mostly used for the graphics, so I rarely see it in combination with fonts. Mostly WAV and TTF, but TTF is more an old fonts document type, so WAV is mostly used nowadays. So and it's supported by all modern browsers, and it is used more widely. And when we use our fonts, we have this font face definition in our CSS file, and we create a name for the font family. And in the SRC property, we add a link to the file with the font. So here we see different files. So these are like WAV and WAV2 are used for modern browsers. And if we want to support some older ones, like Internet Explorer versions from 6 to 8, I don't know who uses them, but we have our special file type for that. And if we create a font family, we can use it and apply it to our body. Here you can see some different tools where you can practice your CSS skills. So you can just enter these websites and train in an interactive mode. I honestly have only tried this one with the Flexbox, so you will need to set different types of displaying these of moving these frogs. And probably I will also I have also tried this one, but I honestly don't remember. But anyway, all these games are fun, and you can try applying CSS to your document here. Okay, so now it is pretty much everything for from my side for today. Maybe you have any questions. I hope everything's clear.
I
Yeah.
have a question that how do you search a property that you forget? Like you just know what you want to do, but you don't know what property I need to use.
You mean like could you please
Sorry.
yeah
I give you an
like
example that like I want to make the text become uppercase, but I don't know what property I gonna use for that case, so I need to Google link that. How do you offer link about that?
you can use the MDN. Like I sent like in the previous presentation, you have where you have links to all HTML tags, for example, like W3 schools. Here you can also read about the CSS properties. So I guess it also goes with experience. So you can Google it, or you can
Yes,
open this tutorial. Yeah.
I just want to know what text you type in Google to find what you need to find.
Oh, for example, I would type something like CSS so that it will know what's what context I'm using. And for example, CSS make text sample. And I see that somebody has already watched it. Okay, CSS make text bold. I see CSS font weight property. Okay, maybe this is something that I need. And okay, I see different weight types, and I can click here, try it yourself, and open the link. And I see that, for example, I have different properties: font weight normal, lighter, bold, and I see that probably this is what I need. So yeah, I guess the W3 schools and the MDN are your best friends in that. Or even Stack Overflow. I hope you're using this one a lot, because if you can't find anything in the documentation, then probably somebody has already asked this question to fellow developers and colleagues. So here you can just type any questions and you will find that somebody has already asked it. So yeah, I guess the
Can
yeah.
I have a question. Can you share or can you make a list some website have a CSS script like I have a comment CSS where get CSS scan. Yeah, that is some like that is some like website I collect to help um, to help my project. Yeah, to help me when I working. Yeah, some CSS script. I have a comment. You do you see my comment? Team teams. Yeah.
No, I don't see it.
CSS web. Oh. up.
You mean will we learn about SCSS?
No, no.
Yeah. Now I
I
see it. So, sorry.
no. I mean, I need some list about some website like get CSS scan like a library with like a library, and we will collect them to help our project. Yeah, list the website.
You mean
Like
can you use different libraries like this in your
yeah,
project?
yeah.
I'm not sure because I think you have to ask your mentors about it because sometimes there are, restrictions of whether the students have to write the CSS by themselves, or
Yeah.
sometimes they can use some libraries, but it's like the question of rules because I honestly don't know that. You could probably ask
I
your
understand.
mentors.
I understand I understand we need to write code by myself, but I sometimes I need some helping or some dem, demo demo to learn. Yeah.
Mhm. Well, I guess you can use it just to, how to say, to copy some styles to your project. But if you mean that if you can use like a whole library in your project, then you should probably ask your mentor, because I'm honestly,
Yeah.
I'm not um, how to say, uh, I'm not in charge of the homework rules.
Yeah. And I know when I code the CSS, have I have some problem, and my problem I have my problem is like the like it is so like a conflict. Yeah,
Mhm,
like this first I have a color red, but
mhm.
somewhere I code color. uh, can you hear me?
Yeah. Now I can hear you.
Yeah. And is I have some conflict in
Uh, yeah, I see. I don't hear you. You're muted. Oh, now you're
uh,
not.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean that if you're worried about the conflict, then probably you need to refer to this table and see what the priority of the selectors is. So you need um, to look what styles you write first and what styles you write below. So mm, probably you need to check the priority for selectors.
I understand, but wait, I will have an example. Yeah. Uh,
Yeah,
uh,
so here you can see that uh, for example, the tag selector is the weakest one, where the inline styles are the strongest ones. And also my advice is that you try to avoid uh, using a lot of selectors that go like one in another. So for example, this you can see the P and an anchor element with a class of 4. I would create like a separate class for this one and style it separately. So try to avoid big complicated selectors.
Yeah.
Like for example, I mean the selector combinators like this. So don't put OL and LI inside. Instead, you'd better just add class to these
Yeah.
elements to style it just by the class, not to exclude this, to remove it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have a
Oh yeah.
conflict of, yeah. And I have a
Oops.
conflict about like a div. Yeah. Well, example, I have a two div, and when I fix their size, and for they will conflict. They will they will like move to the them, and we will arrow like that. I have
First,
a,
I
yeah.
see that you have to put a semicolon.
Yeah.
So it would be like just a moment. Like this. So with the semicolon, with this symbol, there must be no errors, if you mean that. And if you mean the conflict, the conflict with the styles, then the font color blue will be applied to all the divs with the class of class, and all the rest will be red, as I see it.
Yeah.
Okay, I got
Yep.
their size.
It's like a magazine padding up. Yeah. Flat. Yeah. Position absolute. Position relative. Yeah.
Yeah, I see. For the margin, I guess all the margins are, for example, if you see, if you put two divs, one after another, and you add margins to them, then it will take the largest margin of the two and leave it. So, for example, the first div has a margin bottom of 10 and the second one has a margin top of 20, then the distance between them will be 20.
I understand. I understand machine and padding. I understand, but I mean I need some like some experience to fix or to resolve that bug when I meet them. Yeah, like that.
Yeah, so for example, if you have two divs and they have common styles, like for example, they are both colored in red, so you can style them, you can add a common class to them, or for example, if they're different in some ways, then you can add one more class which will be different.
Yep.
So for example, just a moment.
I'm sorry, I want
Yeah.
to give a tip on that. I think that in the Visual Code, if you use that editor, you have a feature that when you hover on the shader rule, they will display the specificity. like I have sent an image on that feature. Maybe you are trying to write two div and they are just apply the div in this later, and you can hover to see the specificity to see which one is applied now. I think that's a feature on VS Code.
Oh, is it a plugin? Yeah, it looks very useful. How is it called?
I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. What's your question?
I mean, how? So is this like?
I think it is a building feature. In the VS Code, it's just the VS Code.
Just a moment. I'm trying to find it because I've never used it.
Yes, I have sent image on the tag box.
Just a moment.
Ew. Okay.
Yeah, I see the image, but how is it like an extension to the VS Code?
Yeah, you have to download the whole Visual Code to the window to use that.
Yeah, I mean, just how is this extension called?
No, it's a building feature in the VS Code when you download
So
VS
it's
Code.
a built-in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you use class, just a moment. I'm trying to check it out on my VS Code. Yeah, so that's great. If you work in VS Code, then probably this feature would be useful. So it will show you the specificity of the selectors, and you won't have to calculate it by yourself. So if yeah, so I guess this one would be very useful. Just a moment, let me check it. Yeah, so just a second. So for example, if I address the element with the class of button, yeah, so I write just a dot button, btn or something like that, any class, then I see that the selector specificity is calculated as 0, 1, 0. For example, if I specify an ID, so this will be the class of button and the ID of ID. Then I see that here and one point was added here, so it has become more prioritized. So yeah, if you still don't use the VS Code, you may think about using it as your text, like as your IDE. The program for writing code. And yeah, and you can see that the selector specificities very well defined here. So do you have any other questions?
No.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
CSS organization, just like how to manage CSS code.
I'm sorry, I don't hear you very well. Can you please repeat your question? Yeah, yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
May I ask about how to?
No, I have no question. Yeah.
Just like there is many selectors and attributes, and I want to make sure that they are organized well.
Sorry. So, can you please, yeah, can you please repeat once again? So, I heard that you were talking about the selectors, or you can text me your. You can text your. Yeah. So this is the padding and this is the margin. Yeah, this is right. Ask about how to organize CS code nicely. Yeah. So, yeah. Honestly, I have a nice material about that, but it's in Russian. If I have, if I find how I can put subtitles in that video, then probably it would be very useful. But the common things are that, as I said, you try to avoid a lot of. Let me share my screen once again. So probably the two main points are to avoid these when you put one select like avoid combinations of selectors. So it's better to give classes to elements which you can combine. So it's okay, for example, if you have like 3 divs, for example, with a class card. So, for example, this card should be red. So you put like card red. So instead of styling it like card NTS child or like first child or first of type, you just put another class here and style it by class. So it's okay if you put common styles in this class, and for this class you write some specific styling. So it's better to style elements by their classes, not by their tags, and not by their IDs, because ID must be only one for one element, and it's very hard to combine them. And what else? Try to avoid using important. So it's important not to use important. And what else? And I guess everything else, it will come with experience. So yeah, it's probably pretty much it.
I have another tip about that because I don't use CSS much, so I think we should like push as last name for every element we use in that, and try to avoid use combinator because it's feel hard for you to manage in the large code. Like just maybe paragraph one for the class name and as every class name for every element you use. I think it's good for the small projects. Yeah.
Well, it depends on the project because on large projects, your code will be divided into modules. So all the styles that you use, they are they only work within one module. So if you write some styles, for example, you have if you use React, for example, you have some HTML. So it will be like another syntax. So in React, the HTML and the JavaScript are written in one file, and in the same folder you have a CSS file which relates only for one component, so like one feature of the app. So for example, you have one component and one CSS file for that, only for that component. So for example, if you have a bunch of cards on a page, then you will probably have one separate CSS file for a card component. And so there you can address elements by classes, and it's much easier because you won't have conflicts. Because if you use one class within one file, then it will only apply to this component. And for example, you use a class button, and if you can use the class button in another components folder, and it will work only for another component. So it's much easier to organize our CSS code if we use like React or Angular or different frameworks where your code is separated into different folders. But if you have like a large HTML file, then it's probably better to use classes. And as you may know, there are different methodologies. I'm not sure if you have it on the program. Let me just check the schedule. Yeah, you will have the CSS methodologies lecture, and we will learn about how you can name your classes, so it would be easier for you to organize your styling. So, have any more questions? Okay, so if you don't have any more questions, then probably I will wish you the best of luck, and we will meet on Wednesday.
Goodbye.
Okay, thank you everybody for coming. Yeah.
Just want to say goodbye and have you a bad day. Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you. Bye bye.